In 2007, a high school biology teacher named Marcus Webb took 15 students on a field trip to catalog wetland plants along the Deschutes River, returning to the school parking lot by 3:45 p.m., with all students accounted for. 18 years later, a park ranger, digitizing old permit applications, found a handwritten note clipped to Marcus's paperwork, a note mentioning an unscheduled stop at a trailhead 9 miles upstream. A stop Marcus never disclosed in any interview, and one that placed the group at a different location during the exact hour. A hiker reported seeing a school van parked near a creek where a student's jacket would be found 3 years later. Marcus Webb taught AP Biology at Riverside High School in Bend, Oregon. He was 41 years old, married, and had been teaching for 16 years. The field trip was scheduled for Thursday, May 3, 2007. The purpose was to document native wetland species as part of a unit on ecosystem diversity. 15 students signed permission slips and boarded the school's 12-passenger van at 8:15 a.m. Marcus drove. A parent volunteer, a woman named Diane Keller, rode in the front passenger seat. The students ranged from juniors to seniors, ages 16 to 18. The planned route took them south on Highway 97 to a pullout near Sunriver, where a marked trail led to a shallow marsh along the Deschutes River. Marcus had used the site for field trips twice before, in 2004 and 2006. The drive from the school to the pullout was 32 miles and typically took 40 minutes. They left the school parking lot at 8:22 a.m. Marcus had filed a trip itinerary with the front office, listing their destination, expected arrival time, and estimated return. The itinerary said they would arrive at the marsh by 9:15 a.m., spend 4 hours collecting samples and taking photographs, and return to the school by 3:30 p.m. At 9:08 a.m., Marcus pulled into the pullout near Sunriver. The students unloaded clipboards, water bottles, and specimen jars. Diane carried a first aid kit and a laminated checklist of plant species Marcus had printed the night before. The marsh was a half-mile walk from the pullout. The trail was flat, well-maintained, and marked with reflective posts every 100 feet. The air was cool, mid-50s, with scattered clouds. Marcus divided the students into 3 groups and assigned each group a section of the marsh to survey. At 10:14 a.m., a student named Kyle Brennan found a cluster of cattails near the water's edge and called Marcus over to verify the species. Marcus confirmed it, took a photograph, and noted it on his clipboard. Kyle would later tell investigators that Marcus had seemed relaxed and focused, and that nothing about the morning had felt unusual. At 11:30 a.m., the groups reconvened at the trailhead. Marcus counted the students, 15 present. Diane checked the first aid kit and confirmed no one had reported injuries or needed medical attention. They ate lunch at a picnic table near the pullout, sandwiches and fruit the students had packed themselves. At 12:18 p.m., Marcus told the students they had time for one more short observation before heading back. He suggested they walk a quarter-mile north along the riverbank to look at a section where willows grew dense along the water. Several students asked if they could stay at the picnic table instead, and Marcus said that was fine. 6 students walked north with Marcus and Diane. 9 stayed behind. At 12:51 p.m., the group returned from the willows. Marcus counted again, 15 students. They loaded into the van and left the pullout at 1:03 p.m. At 3:42 p.m., Marcus pulled into the Riverside High School parking lot. All 15 students exited the van. Parents were waiting to pick up their children. Diane thanked Marcus for organizing the trip and walked to her car. By 4:10 p.m., the parking lot was empty. Marcus filed a post-trip report with the school's science department the following morning. The report listed the species observed, noted that all students had participated, and confirmed that no injuries or incidents had occurred. Marcus attached photographs he'd taken during the trip, including images of cattails, willows, and the students working in the marsh. The trip was considered successful, and Marcus received no complaints from parents or administrators. The semester continued without incident. In June, Marcus's AP biology class scored an average of 4.2 on the AP exam, one of the highest averages in the school's history. In the fall of 2007, Marcus began planning the next year's field trip. He requested the same permit from the Deschutes National Forest and received approval in March 2008. The trip was scheduled for May 8, 2008, with a new group of 15 students. On April 22, 2008, a hiker named Brian Stowe was walking along a trail near Benham Falls, 9 miles upstream from the Sunriver pullout Marcus had used the previous year. Brian noticed a dark blue jacket lying on the ground near a creek that fed into the Deschutes. The jacket was folded, as if someone had placed it there deliberately, and was partially covered by pine needles. Brian picked up the jacket and checked the pockets. Inside the front pocket was a student ID card from Riverside High School. The card belonged to a girl named Emily Chandler, a senior who had been on Marcus Webb's field trip in May 2007. Brian took the jacket to the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office. A deputy logged it as found property and called Riverside High School to request contact information for Emily Chandler. The school's registrar said Emily had graduated in June 2007 and had enrolled at Oregon State University in the fall. The registrar provided a phone number for Emily's parents. The deputy called Emily's mother, Susan Chandler. Susan said Emily was at college in Corvallis, but that she'd ask her daughter about the jacket. Susan called back 30 minutes later and said Emily had lost the jacket during the field trip in May 2007, but had assumed it had fallen out of her backpack in the van or at the school. Emily had never mentioned losing it near Benham Falls. The deputy asked Susan if Emily had been to Benham Falls during the field trip. Susan said no. The trip had been to a marsh near Sunriver, and Emily had never mentioned going anywhere else that day. The deputy thanked Susan and filed the jacket in the evidence room. On April 28, 2008, the deputy received a call from a woman who identified herself as Diane Keller, the parent volunteer from the 2007 field trip. Diane said she'd heard about the jacket being found and wanted to clarify that the group had only visited the Sunriver Marsh and had not gone to Benham Falls. The deputy asked Diane if she was certain. Diane said yes, she'd been with the group the entire day and would have noticed if they'd driven 9 miles upstream. The deputy thanked Diane and made a note in the file. He considered the matter closed and assumed Emily had lost the jacket on a separate trip to Benham Falls at some point after the school field trip. In 2010, a student named Kyle Brennan, who had been on the 2007 field trip, was interviewed by a local newspaper for a feature story about former AP biology students who had gone on to study environmental science in college. During the interview, Kyle mentioned the field trip and said it had been one of the most memorable days of high school, especially the second stop. The reporter, a woman named Lisa Tran, asked Kyle what he meant by the second stop. Kyle said Marcus had taken them to a second location after lunch, a trailhead near a creek, to look at moss growing on rocks. Kyle said the stop had been brief, maybe 20 minutes, and that Marcus had explained it was a bonus observation since they had extra time. Lisa asked Kyle where the second stop had been. Kyle said he didn't remember the exact location, but it had been farther north along the river, past the Sunriver area. Lisa asked if Diane Keller had been with them at the second stop. Kyle said yes, Diane had been there, along with all 15 students. Lisa didn't think much of the comment and didn't include it in the published article, but she remembered it in 2011 when she saw a news story about Emily Chandler's jacket being found near Benham Falls. Lisa called the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office and spoke to the deputy who'd logged the jacket in 2008. She told him about Kyle's comment regarding a second stop. The deputy reopened the file and contacted Kyle Brennan, who was now a college junior studying biology at the University of Oregon. Kyle repeated what he'd told Lisa. Marcus had taken the group to a second location after lunch, a trailhead near a creek, to look at moss. Kyle said he remembered it clearly because Marcus had seemed excited about showing them a specific type of moss that didn't grow near the Sunriver marsh. The deputy asked Kyle if he could identify the location. Kyle said no, but he remembered the drive taking about 15 minutes from the Sunriver pullout. The deputy calculated that a 15-minute drive north from Sunriver would place the group near Benham Falls. The deputy contacted Marcus Webb and asked him about the second stop. Marcus said there had been no second stop. He said the group had spent the entire day at the Sunriver marsh, had eaten lunch at the pullout, and had returned directly to the school. Marcus said Kyle must have been confusing the 2007 trip with another field trip or personal outing. The deputy contacted Diane Keller and asked her about the second stop. Diane said there had been no second stop. She said she'd been with the group the entire day and would have noticed if they'd driven to a second location. Diane said Kyle must have been mistaken. The deputy contacted 3 other students from the 2007 trip. 2 of them, a girl named Sarah Kim and a boy named Jason Pruitt, said they didn't remember a second stop. The 3rd student, a boy named Ethan Moore, said he remembered Marcus stopping the van briefly on the drive back to look at something on the side of the road, but he didn't remember getting out of the van or walking to a trailhead. The deputy filed a supplemental report and noted the conflicting accounts. The case remained classified as found property, owner identified, and was not pursued further. In 2014, a graduate student named Lauren Hayes was conducting research on wetland ecosystems for her thesis at Portland State University. She requested access to historical field trip permits issued by the Deschutes National Forest between 2000 and 2010. The Forest Service provided digital scans of permit applications and related paperwork. Lauren noticed that Marcus Webb's permit application for the May 2007 field trip included a handwritten note clipped to the second page. The note was written on lined paper and appeared to have been added after the application was submitted. The note read, "Approved secondary access, Benham Falls Trailhead, 1.2 miles upstream from main permit area. Access window 12:30, 1:30 p.m., May 3rd. Vehicle limit 1. Ranger J. Hollis, April 29, 07. Lauren didn't understand why the note was significant, but she included it in her thesis appendix as an example of how permit modifications were documented. Her thesis was published online in 2015 and was read by fewer than 200 people. In 2025, a park ranger named Tom Vargas was assigned to digitize old permit applications as part of a records modernization project. Tom scanned thousands of permits and uploaded them to a searchable database. While reviewing the 2007 permits, Tom noticed the handwritten note on Marcus Webb's application. Tom cross-referenced the note with the Forest Service's ranger logs from April and May 2007. He found an entry dated April 29, 2007, signed by Ranger J. Hollis, that read, "Webb Riverside Approved Secondary Site Visit, Benham Falls TAs, 5/3, 12:30, 1:30, advise minimal impact, group size 15 plus 2. Tom contacted the sheriff's office and asked if there had been any incidents involving Riverside High School or Marcus Webb in 2007. The dispatcher searched the database and found the report about Emily Chandler's jacket. Tom requested a copy of the file. After reading the file, Tom called Detective Rachel Ortiz, who had taken over the cold case unit in 2023. Tom explained that Marcus Webb's permit application included a note authorizing a second stop at Benham Falls on May 3, 2007, the same location where Emily's jacket had been found a year later. Ortiz reopened the case and contacted Kyle Brennan, now a wildlife biologist, working for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Kyle confirmed his previous statement. Marcus had taken the group to a second location, a trailhead near a creek, and they had spent about 20 minutes looking at moss on rocks. Kyle said he remembered the stop clearly because Marcus had taken a photograph of the group standing near the creek. Ortiz requested Marcus Webb's photographs from the 2007 field trip. Marcus, now 59 and still teaching at Riverside High School, provided digital copies of the photos he'd submitted in his post-trip report. The photos showed students at the Sunriver marsh, but none showed a second location. Ortiz asked Marcus if he had taken any other photographs during the trip. Marcus said no. The photos in the report were the only ones he'd taken. Ortiz asked Marcus about the handwritten note authorizing secondary access to Benham Falls. Marcus said he didn't remember requesting secondary access and suggested the note might have been added by a ranger for administrative purposes. Ortiz contacted Ranger Jay Hollis, who had retired in 2018. Hollis said he didn't specifically remember Marcus Webb's permit, but his signature on the note was authentic. Hollis explained that secondary access requests were common when teachers wanted to show students multiple sites in a single day. Hollis said Marcus would have had to request the secondary access in advance, either by phone or in writing. Ortiz requested phone records for Riverside High School. From April 2007, the school's phone system had been replaced in 2012, and records older than 10 years had been purged. Ortiz contacted the Deschutes National Forest and asked if there were any records of Marcus Webb calling or visiting the ranger station in April 2007. The Forest Service said personnel logs from that period were stored off-site and would take several weeks to retrieve. In March 2025, Ortiz received the archived personnel logs. The logs showed that Marcus Webb had visited the ranger station on April 27, 2007, and had spoken with Ranger Hollis for approximately 15 minutes. The log didn't specify what they discussed, but the timing matched the date Hollis had approved the secondary access. Ortiz re-interviewed Diane Keller. Diane, now 63, said she stood by her previous statement. There had been no second stop. Ortiz asked Diane if it was possible she'd fallen asleep in the van or had been distracted during part of the drive. Diane said no, she'd been awake and attentive the entire day. Ortiz contacted Sarah Kim and Jason Pruitt, the students who'd said they didn't remember a second stop. Sarah, now a nurse in Portland, said she didn't remember much about the trip and couldn't say for certain whether there had been a second stop. Jason, now a software engineer in Seattle, said he remembered the Sunriver marsh but nothing else. Ortiz contacted Ethan Moore, the student who'd remembered Marcus stopping the van briefly. Ethan, now an architect in Eugene, said he remembered Marcus pulling over on the side of the road during the drive back, but he didn't remember getting out of the van or walking anywhere. Ethan said he'd assumed Marcus had stopped to check a map or take a phone call. In April 2025, Ortiz contacted Emily Chandler, who was now 36, and working as a physical therapist in Bend. Emily said she remembered losing her jacket during the field trip, but didn't remember how or where it had happened. Ortiz asked Emily if she remembered Marcus taking the group to a second location. Emily said no, she only remembered the Sunriver marsh. Ortiz asked Emily if she'd kept a journal or any notes from the trip. Emily said no, but she thought her mother might have kept the permission slip and trip itinerary. Ortiz contacted Susan Chandler, who found the documents in a storage box in her garage. The permission slip listed the destination as Deschutes River wetlands near Sunriver and estimated the return time as 3:30 p.m. The trip itinerary, which had been sent home with students the week before the trip, listed only the Sunriver marsh and made no mention of a second location. In May 2025, Ortiz requested access to the school van's maintenance records from 2007. Riverside High School had replaced the van in 2015, but the district's transportation office still had archived mileage logs. The log for May 3, 2007, showed that the van had been driven 87 miles that day. Ortiz calculated the round-trip distance from Riverside High School to the Sunriver pullout, 64 miles. If Marcus had driven directly to Sunriver and back, the mileage would have been 64 miles. The actual mileage was 23 miles more than expected. Ortiz measured the distance from the Sunriver pullout to the Benham Falls trailhead and back 18 miles. If Marcus had driven from Sunriver to Benham Falls and then back to the school, the total mileage would have been approximately 82 miles. The discrepancy, 5 additional miles, suggested Marcus had driven somewhere else or had taken a longer route. Ortiz requested toll records and traffic camera footage from Highway 97 for May 3, 2007. There were no tolls on that stretch of highway, and traffic cameras had not been installed in the area until 2012. In June 2025, Ortiz re-interviewed Kyle Brennan and asked him to describe the second stop in as much detail as possible. Kyle said Marcus had parked the van in a small gravel lot at the end of a short access road. The lot was surrounded by ponderosa pines, and a wooden sign marked the trailhead. Kyle said the group had walked about 200 feet to a creek where water flowed over flat rocks covered in bright green moss. Kyle said Marcus had been enthusiastic and had explained that the moss was a species called fontinalis, which only grew in fast-moving cold water. Kyle said Marcus had taken a photograph of the group standing near the creek, and several students had taken their own photos with disposable cameras. Ortiz asked Kyle if he still had any photographs from the trip. Kyle said no, he'd lost his disposable camera during a move in college. Ortiz asked Kyle if he knew whether any of the other students had kept their photos. Kyle said he didn't know, but he suggested Ortiz contact the Riverside High School yearbook from 2007, which might have included photos from the field trip. Ortiz obtained a copy of the 2007 yearbook. The yearbook included a 2-page spread about Marcus Webb's AP Biology class, with several photos from field trips and lab activities. One photo showed a group of students standing near water, surrounded by trees. The caption read, "AP Bio Students Explore Wetland Ecosystems, May 2007. Ortiz examined the photo closely. The background didn't match the Sunriver marsh. The trees were denser, the terrain was rockier, and the water appeared to be moving faster. Ortiz sent the photo to a botanist at Oregon State University and asked if the vegetation in the image could be identified. The botanist, a professor named Dr. Alan Rich, examined the photo and identified several species of moss and lichen that were consistent with the Benham Falls area. Rich noted that the specific type of moss visible in the foreground, Fontinalis antipyretica, grew primarily in fast-moving, oxygen-rich water and was common along the upper Deschutes River near Benham Falls. In July 2025, Ortiz returned to the Benham Falls trailhead and walked the area where Emily's jacket had been found in 2008. She measured the distance from the parking lot to the creek, 187 feet. She photographed the terrain and compared it to the yearbook photo. The landscape matched. Ortiz contacted the yearbook advisor from 2007, a teacher named Greg Holmes, who was still employed at Riverside High School. Greg said the yearbook staff had collected photos from students and teachers throughout the school year and had selected images that best represented each class or activity. Greg said he didn't remember who had submitted the photo of the AP Bio students at the creek, but it had likely come from Marcus or one of the students. Ortiz requested the yearbook's original photo files. The school's IT department said the files had been stored on a server that had been decommissioned in 2014 and no backup existed. In August 2025, Ortiz compiled her findings into a supplemental report. The report noted the following: Marcus Webb had requested and received approval for secondary access to Benham Falls on May 3, 2007. The school van's mileage log showed 23 additional miles beyond the expected round-trip distance to Sunriver. Kyle Brennan's account of a second stop was corroborated by the permit note and the yearbook photo. The yearbook photo showed a location consistent with Benham Falls, not the Sunriver marsh, and Emily Chandler's jacket had been found at Benham Falls in 2008, 1 year after the field trip. The report further noted that Marcus Webb and Diane Keller both denied visiting Benham Falls, despite documentary evidence and a credible witness statement. The report concluded that Marcus had taken the group to Benham Falls, but had not disclosed the stop in his post-trip report, and that the reason for the omission remained unclear. Ortiz re-interviewed Marcus Webb in September 2025. Marcus maintained that the group had not visited Benham Falls. Ortiz showed Marcus the permit note, the yearbook photo, and the mileage log. Marcus said the permit note must have been a clerical error. The yearbook photo must have been taken on a different trip, and the mileage log must have been inaccurate. Ortiz asked Marcus why Kyle Brennan would remember a second stop if it hadn't happened. Marcus said Kyle must have been confusing the 2007 trip with a different field trip or personal outing. Ortiz asked Marcus if he'd taken any photographs at Benham Falls. Marcus said no, because he hadn't been there. In October 2025, Ortiz contacted a forensic psychologist and asked for an assessment of Marcus's behavior during the interviews. The psychologist reviewed transcripts of the interviews and noted that Marcus's denials were consistent and emphatic, but that his explanations for the documentary evidence were vague and implausible. The psychologist suggested that Marcus might be concealing information but couldn't determine why. Ortiz requested a warrant to search Marcus's home and personal records. A judge denied the warrant, stating that the evidence was insufficient to establish probable cause for a criminal investigation. In November 2025, Ortiz received a call from a woman who identified herself as a former student of Marcus Webb's. The woman, who asked not to be named, said she'd been on a different field trip with Marcus in 2009, and that Marcus had taken the group to an unscheduled second location without informing the school or the parent volunteer. The woman said Marcus had told the students not to mention the second stop because it hadn't been included in the official itinerary. Ortiz asked the woman why Marcus had wanted to keep the stop secret. The woman said Marcus had explained that he wanted to show them something special, but that the school administration was too rigid and wouldn't have approved it. The woman said the second stop had been brief and uneventful, and she hadn't thought about it again until she heard about the 2007 investigation. Ortiz requested trip records for Marcus's 2009 field trip. The record showed that Marcus had filed an itinerary listing a single destination, but the school van's mileage log showed excess miles similar to the 2007 trip. In December 2025, Ortiz submitted a final report to the district attorney. The report concluded that Marcus Webb had established a pattern of taking students to unscheduled locations during field trips and concealing those stops from the school and parent volunteers. The report noted that while this behavior raised questions about judgment and transparency, there was no evidence of harm to students or criminal intent. The district attorney reviewed the report and determined there was insufficient evidence to support criminal charges. The case was referred to the school district for administrative review. Riverside High School placed Marcus Webb on paid administrative leave in January 2026, pending an internal investigation. The investigation concluded in February 2026 and found that Marcus had violated district policies regarding trip itineraries and supervision. Marcus was given a written reprimand and required to attend training on field trip protocols. He was allowed to return to teaching but was prohibited from leading field trips for 2 years. Ortiz's final note in the file read, "Emily Chandler's jacket was found 187 feet from the parking lot at Benham Falls. in an area the group visited during a 20-minute stop, Marcus Webb has consistently denied making. If Emily lost the jacket during that stop, why did Marcus omit it from his post-trip report? And why did he continue to deny the stop 18 years later, even after being shown documentary evidence? The mileage log suggests the van traveled 5 miles beyond the expected distance to Benham Falls and back. Where did Marcus drive during those 5 extra miles and why? If Marcus Webb took his students to Benham Falls, but never documented the stop, what happened during those 20 minutes that required 18 years of denial?